I'm Bob Putz, and along with my co-host, the seminary crew, we welcome you to our series, Getting to Know the Archdiocese. Today we're joined by Mr. Ed Lawrence from Archbishop Ryan High School, and we're here to discuss Prayers Unite the World and just your general faith experience. Welcome again, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Bob.
Good. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be here.
St. Charles Seminary. So I guess first and foremost, we'd like to hear about you. Tell us about yourself. How's your faith journey?
Well, it's been a long journey because I'm not a young man anymore. And there were a number of things in that journey that look back and you see the hand of God in this. And probably the best example of that journey probably really it involves Archbishop Ryan High School. And the story goes like this. I was actually working on my master's degree in religious studies from St. Charles Seminary.
Okay.
And at that time I was teaching Latin and Greek at a public school. But I was, again, working on my master's at night. And it was like, well, this is really where my heart is. This is where I really think, God wants me to go. So I applied for the job, and they assigned me to Archbishop Ryan High School for girls. And it really has been an interesting journey, even in terms of the connection with my former students. To the point where, for example, when I got married, 2 of my former students were readers in my wedding, one of whom is the Superior General for the Holy Family of Nazareth Sisters in Rome, and the other one chairs the theology department at Father Judge. And that's only fair because I've read in her wedding too. So those kind of connections are really important. And it really has been like a journey of faith. I often tell, students, I'm not teaching religious trivial pursuit. It's not that. I'm teaching the faith. And, that is much more than you have to know the facts. My job is to present the material to you. Your job is to understand it and give it back to me. To the extent that you give it back to me, that's your grade. But I'll always remember what Monsignor Michael Carroll said to me in my interview when I was hired, because Monsignor Carroll was in charge of religion teachers at the time. And he said, you can't mark kids on what they believe. Faith is an ongoing process. You have to mark them on what they know. And that's one reason why, even in terms of how to present, the faith to the students, I would always try to say to the kids, listen, I want to hear what you have to say. I might not agree with what you have to say, but by the same token, how do I know that God isn't going to use you to tell me something I need to hear? So I have to be open. So, but same rule applies for you guys. I want you to be open to what I have to say. And if we respect each other, somehow, the education takes place there, and we're both better off for the experience. And that's what I've tried to do in all those years. I've tried to establish that with the students. Another example of the impact.
Sure.
I had a Christology course here with the late, great Monsignor James Flood. And every time I finished class, I always had the urge to go down to chapel and pray. And that was my kind of goal as a religion teacher. That was the kind of effect that I wanted to have on those students. I wanted them to have that same urge to have that relationship with God.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Lawrence. That's really quite the story, and as a proud student of you myself, that's makes it a little bit more real.
Sure.
Speaking, it seems like you seem to explain that faith is something shared, and prayer life is very important to you. Could you maybe talk about, let people know what are you doing with prayers and sharing maybe Prayers Unite the World?
Sure.
Just tell us about it. How
Sure.
do you get involved?
Well, the story goes like this again. In my classroom, North 100, Archbishop Ryan, there is a collage of pictures and people would say, how long did it take you to do this? And I'd say probably about like 10 years, because I would keep adding different pictures. And I would use it, quite frankly, as an audiovisual aid, that if I was talking about, for an example, an encyclical, I would be able to go over and point the picture out of the Pope who issued that encyclical. So it was a good, they're just not hearing it, they're making that visual connection, and it just brings it a little bit more to life. So that's what I did with it. And even just as an aside, talk about vocations, one of the things I did a couple years ago was I started to put on the wall pictures of religious priests who have siblings that have a priest or a religious, and their parents. And the whole idea there was to talk about the fact that it comes from the family, how important that is. So I would do that type of thing. But one of the pictures I put up there was a picture that I took from a book called The Martyrs of Atlas, which is about the 7 Trappist monks who were murdered in the mid-90s. And one night when I was surfing the internet, I came across the monastery where those monks were from. And the truth is, I probably do have an affinity for the Trappist. I don't know if my goal, what's on my bucket list is to go to every Trappist monastery, but anyway, what I did was, I sent that monastery an email and said, I have a picture of your martyr brothers up on my wall at Archbishop Ryan High School in Philadelphia. Please pray for my students. The next day, I get an email back from that monastery in French. And I took it to the French teacher and said, George, what are they saying? And he said, they're praying for your students. And I walked into the class and showed the students the email and said, here's what I did. I happened to go to that monastery's website last night and asked them to pray for you, and this is the response telling me that they are. So kids, there's literally people around the world praying for you right now. And every teacher knows when you say something and it registers. You can see when it doesn't, but you could see when it does. And I could see that it meant something, to those students. But again, I just thought it was just a one-time event. It was a nice experience for the students. Let's get back to the lesson plan. But then about a week later, I'm going through the school cafeteria to the faculty dining room, and this woman, Alice Simonette, stops me and asks me if I could have some prayer said for her daughter-in-law who was having a difficult pregnancy. So this time I sent an email up to the Abbey of the Genesee in upstate New York with a prayer request. I printed out the homepage, brought it in to Alice and said, Alice, give this to your daughter-in-law and son. And let them know there's people praying for them. And again, it was her reaction. It was like that wow moment. And I kept thinking, boy, I wish everybody had that kind of experience where they could really feel that God's with them. And I got to some of my students and just casually just said, could a website be done? And it was almost like all in theory, where we can connect people's prayer requests to the different religious communities, maybe communities that they don't even know exist. And then maybe they can learn something from it. And they said, Mr. Lawrence, you could do anything with a computer. So with that, I went out and I met with the Pink Sisters, the Poor Clares, the Carmelites, because again, I'm thinking contemplative. That's what I do with the Trappist.
There.
Well, that's what I would. And it was, quite frankly, the input that they gave me, because it was a journey. It was like, I'm thinking of doing this type of thing, sister. What do you think? How do you think, this could be helpful to you? I don't want it to be a hardship or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And, for example, one of the Poor Clares had said to me, because again, my initial thing, I thought, was have them respond. And she said, well, we don't have the personnel that can do that. I went back to the students and said, well, here's the situation. What do you think? And they said, Mr. Lawrence, we could program that into the computer. Well, they'll be able to connect, get something from that community. So that's what we did. And again, I am not really computer literate. My family knows, my friends know. It's just not my strength. And if my students would say anything, I would say to them, like, tell me everything you know about Vatican II. Aha, I know that thing. But they had, but that was really where it was weak. And when I went back, we did a schematic, and I thought, wow, we got it. We did a schematic. And the way we designed it was someone sends in a prayer request. We'll bundle it with, say, 3 or 4 others, and then we'll send out one email to representatives of various religious communities. They were concerned about, well, gee, how many of these we're going to get? Again, well, kids, what could we do? And they said, you can limit it to 1. Yeah, just said to them, how many do you want? You want 1 a day, 1 a week, whatever it is, we can program it that way. So with that, I am literally talking to all these religious communities. I don't have a clue how I'm going to get this website up. Nothing. And truth be told, as I often tell people, in terms of working with the website, I said the one thing I enjoy more than anything is connecting with the religious community and talking with them. That's what I just love it. I got the vision book about vocations, and I just go right down that list, and I love to see what they're doing. And when I share with them what we're trying to do, and the fact, as I say to them, you're doing God's work. I want to see what we could do to help promote that, to help people see you doing God's work. And that's why, like I mentioned, last night about the, what the sister, had said to me one time, gee, how much is this going to cost? And I was taken back by it because, like, sister, I don't need money from you. No, I would have said we could do it to help get you resources. No. Sister, just pray. That's all. Just pray.
That's interesting. You mentioned, prayers certainly benefit the people and the intentions that they're praying for, but maybe you could comment on how you touched on it, how the community seemed to love these prayer requests. They seem to get them in. Do you have any maybe stories or just experience of that?
Sure. I mean, there were a couple things that of those kind of experiences.
Just the community maybe being grateful, or how it affects the community receiving these prayer requests.
Well, certainly in terms of the religious communities, they appreciate the fact that they're doing the one particular request is simply that they would just pray, because their whole vocation is encounter the transcendent, and sharing that with other people basically helps edify them. One of the Trappistines had comment about the fact that just that people know that they are there and that they're praying for them gives the nuns this sense of that they're being true to their vocation, and that's what they find edifying. I've gotten so many different responses from individuals who have requested prayers, and how we have made arrangements to have people pray for other people. I'll use as an example, I got, after I was on EWTN, and that was a good experience. First of all, prayer requests jumped up like 5,000%.
Wow.
I do not know how many Catholics there are in the United Arab Emirates, but we got prayer requests from them. So, it really did reach out. But one of the emails that I received, interesting story, was from a serviceman who was residing at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. And he had emailed me and mentioned about the being on EWTN, and about that he submitted a prayer request. And then he went into some more detail. And detail was this, that just about a year before, his wife of, 25 years or whatever, had passed away. And he said there isn't a day that goes by that it isn't in his heart. And he asked for prayers. So what I did was another person who saw that show and emailed me about participating was a woman out in Kansas. And she said, "Do you want to participate?" Don't think, well, I'm dealing with religious communities. And again, this is a journey. Where's God taking it? I don't know. But I asked her parish, and she gave me the name of the parish. And I contacted her pastor and said, this woman in the parish would like to participate. And he goes, "Oh, she's stalwart of the parish." So what I did was I asked this woman if she and her little prayer community group, they would get together and pray, would send in a prayer request for 9 days, with the 9th day to end on the anniversary of this man's wife's passing. So that in the 9 days period, every day, he would receive that response page, and he would see all the different communities and Catholic organizations that had people praying for him. And that is the church that I wanted to surround him with God's love as depicted by all these people praying for you. You're not alone. In the church, you're not alone. God is with you, and he's given you this beautiful institution, these wonderful people doing all of this beautiful work, making the face of Christ visible to other people.
You talked about getting prayers as far away as the Arab Emirates.
Yep.
How about the convents religious groups? How many have you gotten involved? What's the farthest, or any unique ones, perhaps?
Sure. Initially, again, I began contemplative in Philadelphia, the Abbey of the Genesee, because I know Brother Anthony Weber. And then it was a matter of just kind of like reaching out. And if there was something that, it was almost like if the Spirit moved me and said, boy, that's an interesting community, I reached out to them. So for example, and here's probably a really good example, one of the groups that I reached out to were religious communities that were established for the African American community. And the reason, one of the reasons why I did that is to acknowledge, they are, these people are here in the church, and they have a unique mission. Let's put the spotlight on them, because again, some people might not even know they exist. And the same thing goes again with some of the communities. One was the community in France, and I believe it's the Little Lambs. But I happened to be reading about these nuns in France, of which half of the community have Down syndrome. And I just thought that was just so unusual and so unique. Again, this is the church, and these people are praying for you. So I reached out to them, and sure enough, Mother Linnea, I think it's Line, I think that's how she pronounces it, responded, and we did that. The community in Uganda, that really came out of the blue.
I mean, you say you're not a tech guy, right?
No.
So you're Zooming, you got the web page, you got emails being sent out. What's going on there? How'd you get help?
Well, one of the fringe benefits of teaching 10,000 students, no, it's just not that. Well, one thing is this. There was a student who graduated in 2005, a fellow named Tom Walbold, and it was around that time when that whole experience with the woman at the cafeteria, when that happened. And he was the one I'll never forget this, typical high school kid. I said, I'd like to do this, what do you think about this? Is this possible, and that kind of thing. And he said, yeah, that'd be neat, Mr. Lawrence, that'd be neat. Okay, as I tell people, I'm not good with computers. I don't speak computerese, but he speaks it fluently because he did his undergrad and grad work in computer science at Drexel. So, even when we connected with the programmer, it was the programmer, myself, and this fellow Tom. And Tom and the programmer talked, and I just sat there and went, "That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good." I had no idea what they were talking about, but it was like, okay. And I said to Tom, he goes, "I deal with this all the time. It's no problem." I said, okay. So what he does right now is he works full time for Comcast, but every time that we add a community, any kind of upgrade, for example, that whole process of the share button, where someone can go onto the website, send in a prayer request. If they want it to go to, for example, the editor of their parish bulletin, to have it cut and pasted into the parish bulletin, all they have to do is hit the share button, type in the email address that we would provide that person, the bulletin editor, and then hit send. And off it goes. Well, it was this fellow Tom who's the one who did that particular work.
So you've got two, hopefully future priests sitting next to you there. One, your former student.
Mm-hmm.
Any advice you would give to them, or things as a priest, how they could help you out in your ministry, help you out in your...
Well, certainly in terms of the ministry, one thing I'm always very sensitive to is, these poor pastors have a lot on their plate, a lot. But I want to, in a sense, help them, hopefully to really galvanize, motivate the people in the parish. As I said, I want to get to the people in the pews to connect with those people that are not, to help, bring them back. So this particular project, by teaching at Ryan, the faith, and this project, which is in many ways a continuation of it. It's just a different way of doing it, but it's a continuation of it that I just find that very personally edifying. So that's why I'm happy with what's happening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for being a real powerful witness, and like you said, someone who's really living the faith. Again, thank you for all your years of teaching, and just for in general helping to really put the world on fire with the power of prayer. Again, thank you for fostering all these encounters in prayer, for being a real man of community, if you would. I guess, do you have any final words, any brief things? Do you want to explain just very briefly about Prayers Unite the World? We intend to include links and all the appropriate information in the description.
Sure.
But maybe just real quick.
Sure. In terms of, for example, in terms of seminary, the idea is, if we could have, seminarians, it takes 5 minutes of time, and I keep emphasizing that, to send in a prayer request for their parish. What goes into the parish bulletin says, a member of the St. Charles Borromeo Seminary community requested prayers on your behalf. It gets the seminary's name out there. It reminds people of the mission of St. Charles. And even if they e-blast it out as an email to who's ever on the parish's email list, now they get that information. They also are able to click on Archbishop Perez's video link. So it's a way of reminding people about the real presence, reminding people that there are people praying for them, and that they're a member of this beautiful institution, the Catholic Church. That is what I would love to be able, to see. And I'm committed because, again, with the addition of that share button that Tom put on, we are now able to do that. But that came about as a result of where we saw a need. So that's what we're going to continue to hope to do. Keep engaging St. Charles Borromeo Seminary, and making more people aware of the mission of the seminary, and God willing, support for the seminary, because you're doing God's work, and that's what I've been saying to people. Doing God's work, my job is to help promote it. So.
Thank you again, Mr. Lawrence. That'll be all for today. And thank you again for listening. And thank you for, again, Mr. Lawrence, for being with us here.
Thanks, Will.
Join us again next time as we continue to explore the people, places, and events of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia.